Good day, and welcome to the Silverlight Show. I'm getting rid of the long intros. I don't think anybody really likes to hear them. But I've stayed my hand long enough. I've tried not to get involved in politics for the past bit, but with what's going on in Minnesota, with ICE, with everything else, I feel it is now time to express Silverlight's opinion. Why do people forget their right to due process? I'm discussing with this individual online, and his entire point is they didn't follow due process to get into the country. Why should we follow due process to get out of the country? Well, two things. Innocent until proven guilty. And in the Fifth Amendment, and indeed, almost everywhere in the Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic world, you have the right to due process. I don't have a right to come up to you and say, hey, show me your ID. That's not something I can do. And I probably have better qualifications than most people. I'm not a police officer. I'm not a judge. I'm not, security for a government office. I'm just a regular human being like most of you. The idea that citizens, and I'm going to call them citizens because they aren't police. They haven't had the training. They aren't military. They haven't had the training. Should be able to mask up and go after people because they don't look American. They don't sound American. This is deeply disturbing to me. We've all been there. We're going for a walk. We're going to go see our friends. We're going to go to the corner store. Oops, don't have my wallet, but there's a $20 bill in my pocket. There's, I got my debit card, credit card, whatever with me. No big deal. Mrs. Silverlight, wonderful lady. Love her to death. She works like a dog, and because of that, she's tired, and sometimes she forgets things. She has more melanin than I do in my skin, and she has a fairly thick accent. She's virtually a citizen. We're waiting on one piece of paper, because we wanted to do everything properly. But, were she on the wrong side of that border, someone could detain her at any time. Someone could just grab her, who are you, wearing the mask, not showing identification themselves, and demanding her to identify themselves. So, you can see the houses here. I have multiple friends. And technically, I wouldn't be able to visit the people across the road without bringing my papers with me. That is a scary situation. Now, Silverlight's a big fan of watching court shows, real court shows. Not trying to say anything bad about Judge Judy or the People's Court or anything, but I like real court where they have to follow due process. And this is the big thing, due process. You're guaranteed your right to due process. They have to bring you in. The investigator, note investigator, whether police officer, detective, whatever it is, has to work with the prosecutor and show there's enough evidence to bring a case against you. This is not beyond a reasonable doubt. This is just showing a preponderance of the evidence. 50% plus 1% of the evidence indicates you're probably at fault for whatever. And then the trial proceeds to show if, yes, that was an indicator, or no, you don't have the whole full picture. Again, case where a poorer person not poor as in physically poor, but some poor son of a gun that's been stopped by these masked mall ninjas who are so excited they got a badge, even though they couldn't pass the police exam, they couldn't get into the military, suddenly thinks he has the right to decide who is an American, who is a Canadian, who is British, who's an Australian, who is whatever, and harass people. That's what it is. I'm a 6'3" veteran. I teach self-defense. And I would be scared if somebody came up to me in a mask and said, "Where's your identification?" And day-to-day things happen. We've all had that friend or that interaction with the police where you don't have your insurance. Drop by the precinct within 24 hours, show me your insurance, and I'll drop the charge. That's proper procedure. That's a policeman doing what they're supposed to do because they go to trial. You show your insurance document. That destroys a prosecutor, wastes the court's time, does all that. These ICE agents have no idea of that. And like I said, if I'm deciding to go for a walk, I might bring my wallet. If it's raining, if it's snowing, I might choose not to bring my wallet. I might choose not to bring my cell phone because they're going to get wet. And I don't want them to get wet. I might shove a dollar bill or two in my pocket because, well, we don't have dollar bills up here. But I may stop to get a Coca-Cola or, water or whatever on my way. Do I need to show identification to prove I'm 18 years old? No. I'm not planning on getting anything alcoholic, so I don't need my ID. And that's a freedom that is being eroded rapidly. There's historical examples of this. I don't think I need to point them out to anybody. But we seriously need to think about the path we're going down. This is deeply disturbing. I have no problem with the present system. Judge Fleischer, who's internet famous, is famous when he says, puts people on bond. Okay, your bond is whatever. And keep in mind, if you break that bond, we have to put you in jail. The immigration people sweep at least once a week. So if you are not a citizen, they may decide to get rid of you right then and there. Judge Fleischer informs them of that. He's in Houston, Texas. So the immigration situation is serious. He's not threatening them. He's not saying, you have no right to come to this country if you're not a citizen. He's saying, if you are not a citizen, see, he's informing them. He is a judge. He's giving them due process. I think once or twice he's asked, are you a citizen? Then he explains, look, here's the situation. If we have to put you in jail, then immigration sweeps to jail at least once a week. But that's due process. He's not just automatically saying, you're not a citizen, get out of my country. No. Everybody has the right, and everybody is the key word. Not just U.S. citizens, not just if you're the member of a special club, everybody. Whether that person was abducted from Botswana and dropped off here by aliens, they have the right to try to prove that in a court of law. Whether somebody was smuggled into this country and, is working for a gang that prevents them from getting their citizen, they have a right to show that in a court of law. They have their right to due process. And it's disturbing how people think, well, they're illegal, they shouldn't be here. You know what? On that one narrow point, we can agree. They're illegal, they shouldn't be here. But let's establish beyond a reasonable doubt that they are illegal. Because there's 10,000 situations. People get overwhelmed and forget to renew their cards. It's not right. It's human. It happens. I wouldn't say I'd let them away with it, but I'd give them the chance to say, if you can get your stuff within the next week, and I know there's an option that says, please give me my permanent resident or whatever it is. This is a rush order, and you have to pay an extra $50, I think it is, and you can have it within a guaranteed window. So if they are at all entitled to be here, it's an extra $50 to prove it to a judge. I think that's a good investment. But again, these masked thugs, these life failures that shoot a fleeing woman 3 times in the head, these are mall ninjas. Military, police, etc. are taught aim for the center of the visible mass. Guess what that is? Your torso, most of the time. The person going for a headshot is playing Call of Duty. They're playing PUBG, whatever it might be. That's not law enforcement. That's a video game. We all know that person we've been on the range with. We're like, oh my God, please put me behind the bulletproof material, not the glass, the material that stops everything. Long time ago, we were going for the first time to the machine gun range. And one of the things they used to do is say, if you've ever used LSD, I forget all that there were particular drugs they listed, you had to inform the range officer. And the reason is, these drugs can give you what's called a flashback. You could have taken it once, 10, 15 years later, you have like a secondary high. Now, I've never looked at this up in any way, shape, or form, but we were very sternly warned of it. And I was sitting there, I was hanging out with the smokers because there was only so many seats and they had the most comfortable patch of grass. And one was like, yeah, I took LSD, right before I came into the army. I abused that shit all the time. Range officer, can I please go on with anybody else? Because I do not feel comfortable firing 1,000 rounds a minute when this guy is around me. And I certainly don't feel like raising and lowering the targets because this is like 30 years ago, we used to have to do that by hand. I don't feel like, being the one downfield of this guy. Now, as it turns out, nothing happened, but I had a right to be, still innocent till proven guilty. The guy could have been bragging. He could have just been shit disturbing, which in the military happens all the time. But I chose to give him his due process. If the military chose not to do drug tests on him, that they didn't do anything, I was a dumb, lowly private. Sure as hell wasn't my decision. But here we are in 2026, and there's a faction of people that believe you do not deserve your right to due process. Despite the fact it's written into the Constitution, the Charter, whatever you have, it's there. Due process isn't just dotting some I's and crossing some T's. Due process is an investigation. It's proving, with a preponderance of the evidence, that there is a reason to believe you might be, worth a trial. The judge has the opinion or the option right there to say, in my opinion, there's not enough evidence, dismissed. It can be dismissed with prejudice, in which case it's never brought back, or it can just be dismissed and they can go back and find more evidence. This is not simply a one-shot deal. This is, if they find more evidence, if they have whatever, they can bring it back. That's the purpose of a probable cause hearing. Then you go to a trial, and then it has to be, beyond a shadow of a doubt, depending on the crime. Traffic crimes is, again, preponderance of the evidence, 50% plus one. Beyond a shadow of a doubt would be for things like, murder, grand theft, assault, treason. Yeah, they want to make sure you're guilty with no reservations. And to think, some poor person who's come here, who's worked and who's contributed legally, can be stopped by these utter buffoons who think, ooh, I bought this katana from the party store. That automatically makes me a ninja. That's what a mall ninja is. It takes skill to learn to use anything. I've fired everything from black powder to anti-tank weaponry. I've mastered fencing. I'm very proficient with a quarterstaff. But I have no idea how to use things like nunchucks. I know where I'm good at. I'm good with particular throws. I have an Aikido style of moving. I'm not going to win against some Brazilian martial artist who's been in the cage 15,000 times, but I'm probably better than most of the thugs out there. I'm not a mall ninja. Just because I bought myself a shiny new whatever, it doesn't make me an expert. It doesn't even make me a beginner. But these people, wrapping their heads up so they can't be identified, think they are suddenly the force of law. It's up to them to decide who gets to stay and who gets to go. We need to prevent that. We need to remind people you have the right to due process. These mall ninjas, these thugs, have no right to be doing what they're doing. We're in for a rough couple of years if this is a mentality, because this is going to stick around for at least a generation. You don't just unlearn behavior. The Germans in the 1940s had a rude shock to their system. But they're still around. There's a gentleman I knew who was from 1950s Germany, who was born late 40s, so he never had any direct influence from that period. But he doesn't like anybody with different skin colors, and he's proud to tell you about it if your skin color matches his. So I remember in school judging my man not by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. I have seen immigrants, wonderful people who work hard, who have established business, who are sending their children to school, get told 48 hours, you're out. And this was legitimate with due process. I never did find out the reasons why, because the person was busy packing up and salvaging their life to go back to whatever and figure out how they could possibly appeal the decision. And that's even with due process. They can just be like an umpire. You're out. It's that fast. And that's following due process. Let's not have these people bullying people and trying to enforce imaginary ideas and concepts they know nothing about. Because they're destroying our lives. They're destroying all of our lives. Imagine some kid going to school. How many kids carry ID? Really? And you're going to have some big, tall man that's covering his face, demanding where they're from, what they're doing and stuff. I wouldn't want that to happen to anybody. And it probably happens every single day. Due process. Rights. They're there for a reason. They apply to everybody, regardless of citizenship, regardless of country of origin. Like I said, you could be in a bad James Bond plot and they pick you up and Jason Bourne, I think, where he didn't remember how he got to where he was, but he was a secret assassin. You could be that sort of person in a foreign country. You still would have the right to due process. Power does flow out of the barrel of a gun, but power can be exercised peacefully. It's time we remember how to do things peacefully, civilly, and in a way that we can document so that when that person comes back for appeal, we can say, here's the evidence against you, here's the arguments that were made, you have a chance, you don't have a chance, they didn't consider this, whatever it may be. That's your right as a human being. And probably, some sort of sapient alien would fit under that description too. That's a discussion for another time. Don't stand up for your rights in front of these idiots. They're not going to listen. Nobody ever won a case at the side of the road. But remember, you do have those rights. Let them do whatever they're going to do and abduct you and put you in. But remember, you have the right to be represented, you have a right to a lawyer, and you have the right to be innocent until proven guilty. And there is such thing as a legal search and seizure, even for somebody who's doing something illegal. You know how many drug dealers and pimps and stuff like that have gotten away simply because, the judge signed the wrong line on the search warrant or the cop got the wrong address, whatever the case might be. That's why we have due process. You can go right back and hit them again. But that's why we have due process, so that we can all benefit from it. And armed thugs in the street chasing down women and children, we don't need that. Ever. Thank you for joining us on the Silverlight Show, and we hope you have a fantastic day.